Welcome to Live Vedanta, a podcast about simple living and high thinking. If it's been a minute since you've joined us, you could always find previous episodes by going to our show notes or scrolling a little bit back in your favorite podcast app or feed. If you're loving what you've been hearing, we always appreciate a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so more people can find the podcast. But more importantly, this season we're sharing insights on courageous caregiving through Vibhishana Gita. When faced with hardships and our will to persevere weakens, we often feel overwhelmed and impatient with ourselves and others. The way to become less affected by our context is through balance, which is when our willpower is stronger than world power by being focused and remain centered despite our inner distractions. Let's tune in to see how we can cultivate this.
Hari Om, and greetings from Niagara Falls. I was about to say, welcome to Meaningful Mornings. I've been teaching online since 2014, so now more than 10 years. And every year I teach at least 3 courses, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. So that means over the past 10 years, I would have taught, let's say, 40 courses. One of the best from my side, one of the best that I feel is moving me the most is this year's Thursday class on self-development essentials. You all wanted me to say Monday nights, parenting culture, especially this year. Self-development essentials. I want to share a framework with you that has a lot to do with parenting culture, caring culture, understanding culture. Here's how this framework spans out. It involves 5 S's. The first S, this is like the core S, and everything grows from here, is separation. Separation. I'll give you the Sanskrit terminology too. In Sanskrit, this is avidya. When I forget infinity, I start to feel separate. This then expresses more from separation to smallness. Smallness. In Sanskrit, this would be vasanas. A vasana is a print. It's a personality print that you can't be anything but this personality print. This expresses more as sadness. You know, the character in Inside Out Sadness, that's part of this framework that I'm describing right now. Sadness, in Sanskrit, this would be described as the ashana. Ashana means a strong desire. Now think of this logically. Whenever you have a desire, it's because you feel sad, right? You have a desire for happiness, but you think it's because you need to eat at this restaurant or buy this car or for people to talk to you about like this and that. So the third S is sadness or ashana. The fourth S is stress. And if I can give you a different way to, at least me verbalizing this so you remember it more, there's separateness, there is smallness, there's sadness, then there's stressness. I know stressness is not a real word, but you get it. Stressness. In Sanskrit, the word is vritti. The more thoughts you have, the more stress you have. But when your thoughts are regulated, you don't feel this stressness. And the fifth S, and this may describe a lot of us, it is stuckness. In Sanskrit, that is called karma. Where I wake up in the morning and all I think about is all of the things I have to do. As I lie down in bed, I'm thinking about all of the things I didn't do. And this is simply my day, day after day after day. Everyone followed those 5 S's. Separateness expresses as smallness, expresses as sadness, expresses as stressness, expresses as stuckness. Now, my question to all of you, how do you come back from this? How do you become unstuck? In our parenting culture course, though we care about temporary solutions, what we want is a permanent solution. So that means not tending to just the stuckness, but really tending to the separateness. To this separateness, or that avidya. Being a parent, being a caregiver is an opportunity to love one. And if you really love one, you can't help but start to love oneness. If loving one feels so good, makes one feel less stuck, stressed, sad, small, one will keep living in this way, not just to those who are biologically related to them or legally related to them, but one will live for oneness. In the Ramayana, there's a special section entitled Vibhishana Gita. These are practices to become more courageous. As caregivers, a sign of courage is to follow through with what is right. That means enduring being liked and disliked, but to do that which is right. We have covered many aspects of Vibhishana Gita. Most recently, we went through what is holding the horses together. What is holding the horses together? That is the reins. And I believe there's a saying, hold your horses. People who are impatient, people who are rajasic, so you have to tell them, hold your horses. If you really study the 2 values we've covered thus far and the third we're going to cover today, they're softer values. Think about the horses. One of them is bala, stamina, right? That's not a very soft value. But in terms of the reins, the first rein was forgiveness. That is a soft value. It is a subtle value of remembrance for us when we went through forgiveness. By forgiving, we become more efficient. Those who don't forgive, they're very slow in deciding because they have so much weight, so much emotional baggage, it's hard for them to decide anything. But for those who forgive, they're more efficient. They're not holding on to that weight or emotional baggage. The second rein was kindness. Kindness makes our lives easier. Forgiveness, you become more efficient. Kindness, your living becomes more easy. And the reason for this is you're living to make others' lives easier. That goodwill will return to you. When we analyze the law of karma, we tend to only understand this in the negative. Like our kids. If Shuka did something wrong, then Vyasa will say, Bhagwanji knows. He's watching you. Right? He never says that when Shuka does good things. It's only when Shuka does bad things that Bhagwanji knows and he's watching you and so on. So this is how we relate to karma. But if we can understand karma as there's bad will and there's goodwill, if you make others' lives easier, they're going to make your life easier too. One final way to follow kindness. In the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 15, in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 12, verse 15. Chapter 12, verse 15. one of the most practical values in all of the Bhagavad Gita is shared. Very much a value about living and working with people, and that is no dvijate. No dvijate. This is made up of na ut vija. Vija means to get heated up. Ut means to be very heated. And the na means to not be very heated. Put in a simpler way, no dvijate means not to be annoyed by the world and not to annoy the world. Both. Don't annoy the world and don't be annoyed by the world. And Pujya Swami Tejomayananda shared, the way to live no dvijate, that is to make others' lives easier so that your life is easier too. It is to follow your responsibilities. When you follow your responsibilities, you make other people's lives easier. Yes. When you're following your own responsibility, people can't annoy you as much because you're so immersed in doing what is right. This is super practical. And if you still disagree, but it's so hard not to be annoyed by the world, think about driving. If you're driving and someone's driving too fast or too slow, that's annoying, correct? But if someone's driving in a defensive way at a regular speed, they don't annoy you. They're following the rules of the road, so it's not annoying. It's the people who don't follow the rules of the road that are annoying. That includes us too, yes. We all feel we're the manager of the road. Only we know how to drive. No one else went to driving school. So, the reins, these are softer, subtler values that require more reflection. With forgiveness, it's so you become more efficient. With kindness, so all becomes easier. We continue into the third and final rein, and this is the final value that we're going to study for 2024. Somehow I was looking back at my notes because I was unpacking some boxes, opening some boxes. On December 4th of 2022, I was teaching in the Happiness series. And on December 11th of 2022, I was teaching Samata. And I thought that to be so remarkable that exactly 2 years later, on December 9th, I'm teaching Samata, and the Happiness series starts tomorrow. So this notion of time repeats itself is very strong to me when it comes to teaching some courses, teaching some content. Okay. Anyone who's had a relationship with their local mandir, or for many of us, our local center, it could be a Chinmaya Mission center or another organization center, I'm sure that you have felt your relationship, your experience with that mandir, that center has been personal. Many of us grew up in certain mandirs and we remember rolling around on the carpet and eating in this certain area and so on. A personal experience. But now as we've gotten older, if you remember your time in college or now in your corporate setting, it's less personal and more professional. Your relationship with your professor was professional. Your relationship with your supervisor is probably professional. Yes? When it comes to sacred sciences, when it comes to self-development, you can't just have this be personal and you can't just have this be professional. There has to be a mixture of this being personal and professional, for this to have an effect on us. With objective sciences, the rules are different. With subjective sciences, the rules are different too. And the reason I bring this up for everyone, as we complete this semester of parenting culture, reflect on how meaningful, or maybe a better word is, how safe the discussions are that you have class after class. Do you all agree? You get to see the same people from Kansas City or from Washington, D.C., or from Maryville. You feel safe with them. So that's more at the personal side, but now at the more professional side, when Vivek is sharing insights with you, I'm a trained Vedanta teacher, but I'm also a parent of two. So I bring these details to the forefront because humans that are busy, that means parents, caretakers, we have a propensity to take for granted. We don't realize how special this course, this class is. We take it for granted. In Sanskrit, the word for taking for granted is avidya. That's how I'd started the class. I'm bringing it up again because sometimes we feel, I'm not ignorant. But if I'm ignoring, then that is a sign of ignorance. And zooming into this a little bit more, with an objective science, you can know it and not follow it. But when it comes to courage and all of these values, if you don't follow it, you don't know it then. So for a lot of us who have been involved with mandirs and centers for so long, if you're not practicing, if you're not trying to convert these values into virtues, then you don't know this. Maybe some of the kids that you teach in those mandirs and centers know more because they're practicing more sincerely. They're following through more dynamically. So this is my check to all of you. As we complete our last value, and next week we have our review, and then we'll have a pause for a month, essentially. The last value for now, the last reign overall is Samata. Samata in English means balance. Shri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita shares this many, many, many times. Right in chapter 2, he tries to define what yoga is, and he says, Samatvam yoga uchyate. Uchyate, it is known as, what is known as? Yoga is known as samatva, being balanced. Now offering some reflections to make this more practicable for us. I start off with, balance is when your willpower is stronger than world power. As soon as your willpower becomes less than world power, you start to feel overwhelmed. You feel overwhelmed, and then how do you relate to your kids? How do you relate to your extended family? With impatience. But the one whose willpower is stronger than world power, they don't feel overwhelmed. They also have lots to do. There's lots on their mind, but they don't feel overwhelmed. And so they tend to operate more patiently or more in a balanced way. Zooming into this more, balance is when outside forces provoke you, but you don't allow yourself to be provoked. And so this doesn't sound redundant. I'm going to give you a more deep value. It doesn't come out so clearly in Vibhishana Gita, but this is for our own development. The deeper value is focus. Focus is when inside forces try to provoke you, but you don't get provoked. If I come back to a driving example, when you're driving, what distracts you more? Other drivers or what's on your mind? I'm going to infer it's what's on your mind, correct? What just happened, what's going to happen. See, those are inside forces. And if you allow yourself to be provoked, distraction starts. So I'm giving you both of these values. When an outside force tries to provoke you and you're not provoked, that's balance. Right now, I'm watching a show called Slow Horses on Apple TV. How many of you are watching Slow Horses? Okay. I like it a lot. There's one character, his name is River Cartwright. And most recently, he was put into the MI5 dungeon. And that agent was really tearing him up physically. And he was just trying to provoke him for him to hit back, because if he did, he'd be removed from the MI5. But he knew this all along. And he said, I'm not going to hit you, because as soon as I do, I'm no longer going to be an agent. And I just thought that was so cool how the divine made me watch Slow Horses today to give you the reference for provocation and Samata. Really, it's Swami Tejamananda said it in a much gentler way. If someone is calling you a gada, can you tell me in English what gada means? There's not everyone's a Hindi speaker. So what does gada mean? Yeah, someone's calling you a donkey or jerk. Nobody calls anyone a donkey in English. If someone's calling you a jerk and you're acting like one, then say namaste or say thank you and stop acting like one. But if you're not acting like a donkey / jerk, then why would you take that personally? It doesn't make any sense. That's balance. Zooming into this a little bit more. Right now, I'll only introduce this framework for you, and I'll elaborate more when we start to review. Tools to help us balance. Here is your framework. Number one, I'm going from short term to long term. Short term is to unitask routine. When you are unitasking, the propensity for you to be balanced is much higher than if you're multitasking. Agreed? Some of you were at the ashram yesterday, and it came to service time, and 12 different people were asking me, now do we do Vivekji? What do we do now, Vivekji? And even they're trying to be helpful, but even trying to coordinate 12 people to vacuum and to clean wax and so on, there's a lot. But if I only had to tell one person, vacuum that carpet, it's much easier for me to be quiet inside. So unitask, especially that which is routine for you, like vacuuming, washing dishes, etc. Here's number two, utilize planners. Utilize planners. A good habit I got into in January of 2008 when I started teaching was writing notes. Now, when someone asks me to speak on a subject that suppose I haven't taught in 5 years, I just go back to that notebook and read my notes. Because I planned it back then, now it's much easier for me to plan. So utilize planners when it comes to shopping, when it comes to taking notes, things that you have to do. And now finally, this is the most difficult to intellectually get. Undertake more. Undertake more. The more time you have to waste, what do you do with that time? You waste it. And the less time you have to waste, you have less time to waste. It helps you to keep moving forward. It helps you to be balanced. Undertake more. Commit that you will never miss a class of parenting culture. Commit that you'll exercise 6 times a week, whatever you're going to commit to. By undertaking more, it's almost like you've tethered yourself to the ground. So when pushes and pulls come, you're less pushed and pulled. Malcolm X had shared, if you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for everything. And I'd heard another teacher shared as, if you don't wake up with a purpose every morning, the world will take over. Have you all found that? When you wake up with a purpose, you run that world. When you don't have a purpose, the world eats you alive right away. I'm going to end with reading the application from our workbook. It's an excellent application. Document the circumstances that cause you or your child to feel imbalanced, paying close attention to the time spent doing things that help you stay grounded. Sleep, diet, exercise. Japa. I don't know if you read the version that I have. Japa has been turned to Japa. So it's all okay. I'm practicing kindness. I'm practicing forgiveness. You will find in your own life, in your children's life, that when you engage in sadhana, you naturally become more balanced. And as soon as you find a reason not to engage in sadhana, you'll become imbalanced.
If you enjoyed what you heard or want to learn more, share this episode with a friend or find us online at facebook.com/cmniagara. For those on the journey of self-development, Chinmaya Mission Niagara provides a community forum for seekers to listen, reflect, and contemplate. This podcast is produced by the Young Adults of Chinmaya Mission, an international nonprofit working to transform individuals through the knowledge of Vedanta. Until next time, inspire, love, be.